I was born in Radziejów Kujawski in Poland. The war broke out in 1939. I was the only child. My parents were Leib and Sprinza Markowska. I had a large family besides us, uncles, aunts, grandparents.
Tell us a little bit about each of your parents, the kind of people they were, and the kind of home they made for you, and a little bit about family gatherings and holidays and some things like that.
Well, one thing I can see now more now than before, when I was a youngster, 15 years old, what my mother did, how important it was, and who she was. She was a very charitable lady. She, in fact, she and my wife's grandmother used to collect money and distribute it tuition people that didn't have, and no one knew. My father was a glass contractor. In other words, if someone built a house, he installed the glass in the house. Mm-hmm. And my mother had, besides, a little business of her own.
Okay. Tell me, go ahead.
My family, the rest of my family, each one was well-off, average family. We used to walk out, beautiful gardens in our hometown, and eat the fresh fruits, the fresh flowers, the fresh strawberries. It was so beautiful. All the children, all the grandchildren walking on Shabbos, to the... It was beautiful. It was a good feeling with a large family to be together like that. And Passover, and during the New Year's or Yom Kippur, the family was together in my grandfather's house. So, what can I say? It's something of the past. It's something to remember. It's something that feels good to remember.
I want to go back to September 1st, 1939. Tell me how your life changed after the Germans invaded Poland. The next day, what was different in your life, or the next week?
Well, we were not allowed to walk in the streets. We were wearing at that time the yellow patches. Whoever had a business had to leave it and move into the ghetto. Every day we were sent out to do some work somewhere in a different village, either work on construction or shovel snow, wintertime, or I remember one day our synagogue was burning in the morning, and I could see it from our window in our house. And 2 hours later, all the Jews were called, and the question was asked, who burned the synagogue? Of course, everybody was throwing away the matches because they were afraid, they're going to ask for the matches. So you could see people were trying to cover them up. But that was the question. There was a lot of things that, there was a city, Piotrków. Older Jews, maybe about 5, 6 Jews, were pushing a car 7 miles from that city to our city and back, just for fun, just because they wanted him to do that. And they made a Jew in charge of it. There were so many things that I could get into telling stories that there's no end, but it's impossible to tell all the stories. In 1941, I was taken to Wojewo. It was a labor camp, and I was there for a while. and then I was sent to Stockrode. In Stockrode, I worked in the canals. In other words, we were cleaning the canals. In the morning, 8 o'clock in the morning, we walked in the canal without barefoot from 8 in the morning to noon, and from 1 to 5. And sometimes the water was very cold. I'm very surprised that I could take it. It's a miracle. When I think back, it was a miracle to work like that every day. In Stockrode, I was there with my father, and they wanted to send my father home at that time. And my father decided that I should be sent home instead of him, so they sent me home. I was home only a while, and the Jews of Radjev found out that Jews in all the other cities were taken away, and it's coming to our city. And one day, all the Jews were called out, and they were told to take with them all the gold, all the best thing, because they're going to live someplace else. And everybody knew that something is happening. What, they didn't know, but they knew that something is happening. I was with my family and the rest of the people on the street waiting to be taken away. And suddenly, my mother gave me a package, and she said, "Here is a package for you, and you run away. Go any place you want. Run away to a camp, any place. Maybe you'll be the lucky one." And at that time, I ran away. And I was walking for about 20, 25 miles to a camp, to Oyevo, where I was before there. My uncle and aunt were in that camp, so I was not by myself. I had family there too. And from Oyevo, we were taken, that was in 1943, we were taken to Auschwitz. In the cattle cars, we were traveling for about 3 days without food, without anything, till we arrived in Auschwitz. And in Auschwitz, the Gestapo was everywhere with the dogs. We didn't know what was going on, but suddenly we found out that some people were told to go to the right side and some people to the left side. And I guess the sick ones, the old ones, the children were going to the right, and the healthy ones and the young ones were going to the left. Of course, I didn't know what that meant, but we were taken to Buna, Auschwitz, and that was a camp of 10,000, 12,000 people, prisoners there. In Buna, I was there until 1944.
What did you do there?
In Buna, we worked on construction. They were building some buildings which were, we didn't know exactly what was, everything was secret. But I was working on construction there.
What was your typical day like in Buna?
Carrying, moving steel beam, different parts of steel, carrying everything to whatever they wanted us to do. I was carrying once, I remember on the rolls we were moving once a steel beam, and the beam fell off and fell on my left toe, and it cut off my toe. And that's all you needed there. Anyway, that was winter time. They carried me to the hospital, and I was sitting in the hospital for about 2 hours until a doctor came to see me. I was there for about close to 2 weeks in the hospital. Now, if you were in the hospital more than 2 weeks, you were taken away to the crematorium. That's all they allowed was 2 weeks. It was a day or two before the 2 weeks, and I decided to go in and maybe I can do something about it. I know it wasn't healed yet, but maybe I could do something. So I met Dr. Grossman from Berlin, a Jewish doctor, and I says, Dr. Grossman, what can I do to save myself? He says, the only thing I can tell you you can do is, I'll release you, and you go to work, and maybe it will heal. That's the only thing I can do for you. So he released me. I walked to work every day, about 5 miles one way, 5 miles the other way, in these wooden shoes. And every day when I came home from work, I went to the Kabe, which is the hospital, and they bandaged it, and somehow it healed. And that was Buna Auschwitz. There were many things that I could say about Buna. Every day we came home, there was some surprise. A boy, 16, 17, is hanging already because they said that he tried to escape, which was not true because he was a friend of mine. But every day there was a surprise at Buna. In 1944, we left Auschwitz, January 1944.
Were you in Birkenau at all, or just Buna?
Buna. I was close to Birkenau because at that time they asked me what your father did, and I told him that my father was a glass contractor, and I used to help him out during the summer. So I belonged for a short time to a commando where they used to install glass in some of the houses there. So I was very close to Birkenau. But that was only a short time. There was day and night between a concentration camp and a labor camp. There were good things and bad things about both. In 1944, when we left Auschwitz, because the Russians were coming already, and the snows were high, I was pushing a bicycle from Auschwitz to Gleiwitz for one of the assessment. And he had at that time, I don't know how many cigarettes on that bicycle. He came over for some cigarettes and gave me a package of cigarettes. With that package of cigarettes, I organized myself from some of the chefs from the kitchen, some bread, and that helped me quite a bit during the time that we were on open trains, open cars in January, traveling from Gleiwitz day and night to Czechoslovakia. I don't know how many people were sleeping with the dead people. Half of them were dead and half of them were alive. Our food was the snow. When we arrived to Czechoslovakia, to Prague, they were taken out. At that time, they were taking off all the dead bodies and putting them all in a house. The civilian population of Prague were coming with breads, throwing breads at us because they knew that we didn't have any food. Whoever caught it was lucky. But if you didn't catch it, you were unlucky. I just happened to notice that one of the breads fell down. And I, at that time, didn't care one way or the other. I just jumped from the train to pick up that bread. At that time, that was the death penalty, to shoot me. And that was easy because the house was right there full of bodies. It just happened so that there was an older soldier. Instead of shooting me, he hit me, and he says, "Go back." So I came back on the train, and somebody cut the bread. Everything was ripped apart, and nothing happened. And I was saved at that time. I was lucky at that time, too. That was a miracle, because They had the right to shoot me. From Czechoslovakia, we arrived at Oranienburg, Berlin, Oranienburg. And we were there for a short time. Then from there we were taken to Flossenburg. That was a concentration camp, and a bad one. I was there only maybe for about 3 days. I was happy to get out of there because there was a crematorium right there, and it was bad. From there, from Flossenburg, we were taken to Plattling. There was a camp, a small camp, concentration camp, for about, I would say, 200 people. And 2 of the people that were in charge of that camp were 2 murderers. They were in prison for life, and they were our bosses. They were our, in other words, they were taking care of us. I never mentioned that to anyone. I didn't want it because I couldn't. I still can't, but I don't even feel like mentioning it here. But I've seen once how he took a man and threw him in the toilet until that man never came out.
Do you know this man's name?
No. One day, before we went to work in the morning, he brought in a big dog. And he says, he asked everyone, how do you like that dog? Isn't that a beautiful dog? And everybody said, yes, that is a nice dog. When we came home for supper, we ate supper and there was some meat in our soup. He said, how did you like supper tonight? And everybody said, oh, good, we had a lot of meat there. Well, that was the dog that you saw in the morning.
Now, this was the commander of this camp?
Right. And that was Plattling. Then, suddenly, we were sent out to the airport to work at the airport. In the morning, we came out there, it was around 7:30, and around 9 o'clock, the sirens were already going on. And we didn't know what it was, but we could tell that something was wrong here. Either they're going to bomb or something. And suddenly you could hear the noise, the American and the British bombers were coming. And when they arrived, all the soldiers were hiding in the halls. But all the prisoners were just laying in the middle of the field. There were maybe about 15 planes, bombers, heavy bombers, moving all around the airport for about a half an hour. And we were laying there. After half an hour, they were bombing. Every plane on the airport, in the airport, was burning. After they left, they bombed the place where there was oil. And that was burning for about 3 weeks. But when we got up, when I got up, there were shells all around us. And not one was hit. Not one was hurt. That was in Plattling. What happened is, after everything was over, we were told we're going back to Plattling, to the city, and we have a job to do. Before they left, they bombed the station there, railroad station. And in the bunker, there was a lot of people there. And all the people that were in the bunkers were dead. And we had to take out all the dead people. Hands, heads, legs, for about 5, 6 hours to clean out. We had to do that. And then we went home. From Plattling, we were marching. We didn't know where we were going, but suddenly everyone stopped at a factory because the soldiers were hungry. And we were 4 friends together, always stuck together. One of us, Max, came over to me and said, Jack, I'm going to disappear from here because I was told they're going to take us out and kill us all like dogs. If you want to go, fine. If not, then the 3rd one came over and the 4th one came over, and everyone decided to move out from the camp, from that place. We came outside. We didn't know which way to move. On one side, there was a road, a highway, where the German troops were moving back already. On the other side, you could see nothing but trees. We couldn't decide which way to move. I was the one to decide, let's go through the highway. And we walked through the highway, can you imagine, in our uniforms, in the prison uniforms? And the soldiers were watching us, and we thought that we were already through the highway, and suddenly they're calling us back. We stood before the officers, and one of the officers asked me, I was the spokesman, where did you run away from? What camp did you run away from? And I said, Herr Oberscharführer, we didn't run away from our camp. We were told to walk away. We can go any place we want. That's what I told him. So he says to the soldiers, take him into the city, Trotzburg. If the police is there, then hand him over to the police. If the police is not there anymore, then bring him back, and wir machen einen kurzen Prozess. We're making a short process. In other words, they'll shoot us, and that will be it. So here is already the end. We can see already the end, and we're marching to Trotzburg, to the city, and there's 2 soldiers in the front and 2 in the back, like that, with the guns. We come into the city, you don't see any policemen anymore. Everything is empty. Suddenly, one of the soldiers noticed that a soldier and 2 prisoners are walking with a little cart. And that little cart was that they were coming into the city to pick up some meat for Dachau. That was the Camp Dachau in that city. So one of the soldiers says, why don't you take over these prisoners there and we'll let them, they wanted to get rid of us. Leave them there with the prisoners. So we walked over to the prisoners and to that soldier, and one of the soldiers said to the German soldier, can you please take these prisoners in with you to the camp? You have a camp here, right? He said, yes. He says, no, these are not my prisoners. And the 2 boys that were with him were Polish, and they thought that we were Polish. So he said in Polish, are you Polish, from Poland? And I said, yes. So I said to him in Poland, please do me a favor. Take us into the camp, because otherwise they're going to shoot us. So he talked to the soldier, and the soldier agreed, and they left us. When they left us, the soldier disappeared because he was afraid of his life. So we walked in with the 2, and that was the camp. We were there for about 3 days, and the American forces, the American troops, came in. And they opened the gates, and that was it. We ran out to the city. We got ourselves an apartment, the 4 boys. And We were in that city for about 2 weeks. After the 2 weeks, I met an American soldier, and he persuaded us to come with them because everyone was a tailor at that time. He says, you open in the company a tailor shop and you're going to have it good.
He's a Jewish soldier.
A Jewish soldier. So we traveled with them to Salzburg, from Salzburg to Vienna, Austria. There we stayed in a sanitarium with the soldiers. We had our own, everything was already set for us, the rooms and the shop, everything was set. And we had it good there. We needed it at that time, the food, everything, we needed it. When I was in camp, I found out what happened. What happened is this. All the Jews from our hometown were taken into a church. To the church, trucks came, the big trucks came right in front of the church. All of them were packed in the trucks. And on the way to Helmno, they let the gas in. By the time they came to Helmno, near Kolo, the bodies were ready to be thrown in the graves. And that's how we found it out 2 days later.
What were your feelings at that point? I mean, did you have a sense for what was going to come, or what?
I had no feeling at that time. I had no feeling because I knew that that the end is not going to be good for me. Maybe they're better off than I am. And things looked that way all the way through. Everywhere I was, there was always a miracle. There was always something that I didn't expect that I'm going to make it, but I somehow made it. So, and then in Vienna, we were there with the army for about a year or so, and then one by one left for the States. I lived in New York until 1950. In 1950, I came to Milwaukee for my vacation. A cousin of mine, Markovsky, and I met my wife here, because I knew my wife from my hometown, because we used to go together to the same grade school. And a week later, I came back to Milwaukee, got married in 1950, and that was it. We have 2 children. I cannot believe today that all these things happened to me. I cannot believe that a human being can go through that and still be alive. I believe, I always had that feeling that something is with me. I don't know why. And I didn't care one way or the other at that time. Life didn't mean much because the family was gone, everybody was gone. Who am I left?
You had some terrible experiences going through from one camp to another, and is there one that stands out in your mind as the most horrifying, or, I mean, the experience with your, go ahead.
One was, can you imagine in the morning to walk in the canal barefoot and stand there for about 4 or 5 hours? Sometimes it was almost like the water was so cold that it would cut off the legs.
Now, when was this?
That was in Stockrode, 1941, I think, or 2. That was something that I still cannot believe that it could happen. Every day like that for a long time. One more thing was in Czechoslovakia. That I'll never forget. Can you imagine for 3 days in January on an open cars, without food, without anything, bodies laying around, dead bodies, not knowing where you're going, what tomorrow is going to be.